So I don't know if anybody was surprised at Megan Barry announcing that she was going to run. Of course, former Nashville Mayor Megan Barry. I feel like that was, years ago now. The whole had an affair with the bodyguard and the cemetery. And by the way, Johnny and Ken, I don't know if the cemetery is actually in the 7th Congressional District. I'll have to look that up a little bit later on. But she's been talking about running, and she sent up a balloon, a trial balloon, if you will, a few weeks ago. And so now she finally made the decision that yes, indeed, she is going to be running for the 7th, and she did make the announcement yesterday. And here's what she had to say. Johnny, need some audio?
There are losses so profound, they change you forever. And there are lessons learned in life that are so profound, they stay with you forever. 6 years ago, while I was the mayor of Nashville, we lost our son Max to a drug overdose. A knock on the door in the middle of the night that no parent should ever have to answer. And during that time, I made mistakes. I owned up to them, and I took responsibility. And my husband Bruce and I worked through it all together. I don't think anybody should be defined by their worst moments. It's what you do next that counts.
All right, so she mentions the death of her son Max a total of 3 times. Now, I'm going to give a 30-second history of former Nashville Mayor Megan Barry, because that was years ago. And we got a lot of new people not only listening to Nashville's Morning News, but live here in Middle Tennessee. A lot of people moving here, and they may not know what happened. Megan Barry, former mayor of Nashville, she was caught having an affair with her bodyguard, and there was, all kinds of things. But among them, of course, you have the character issues, the morality issues, but you also have a misuse of taxpayer funds, because that bodyguard was charging taxpayers thousands of dollars in overtime. And so as Megan Barry, as mayor, was going to all of these exotic locales, her bodyguard was along for the ride. And so there's a lot of misappropriation of funds. So anyway, she mentions the death of her son, not once, not twice, but 3 times in her announcement. And he did pass away tragically because of an overdose of fentanyl. And she seemingly blames Mark Green and Republicans for doing nothing about the fentanyl crisis. I want you to listen very closely to the way that she frames this.
I look at the total dysfunction in Congress and its failure to make any kind of difference in the lives of our families. It's outrageous, but we don't have to tolerate it. In the years since Max passed, we've seen the opioid crisis get worse. We've become immune to innocent people being gunned down in our schools and our communities. And Congressman Mark Green has done nothing.
Are you kidding me, really? Is that really going to be the play of Megan Barry? Saying the Republicans and Mark Green haven't done anything about the fentanyl crisis, the opioid crisis, all of this coming across our southern border. She mentioned guns, which we'll get to. But to say that Mark Green and the Republicans have done nothing to try and stop the fentanyl crisis is simply a lie. And so I heard that and I thought, really, is this? That is so provable that that's a lie. Mark Green and the Republicans want to protect the border. They want to take on the fentanyl crisis. They want to go after China. They want to go after Mexico. They want to stop the fentanyl crisis at the southern border. Megan Barry is a Democrat. Joe Biden is a Democrat. Alejandro Mayorkas is a Democrat. It's the Democrats who have opened up the border and refused to deal with the drugs plaguing our country and coming into this country through their wide open border. So how dare Megan Barry insult the intelligence of the people of the 7th District by saying that Mark Green is the problem? Does she really think that the people of Tennessee and the people of the 7th are really that dumb? I understand that people are used to politicians lying, but this is beyond the pale. You know, one thing that Mark Green has been demanding, I remember this from way back, is updated numbers of fentanyl deaths from the CDC. You know why? They won't give updated numbers. I believe the reason why they wouldn't give updated numbers is because it is really bad. And the updated numbers of deaths from fentanyl will make Joe Biden and the Biden administration look bad. Because why? Because it is their wide open border and their kowtowing to China and Mexico that is facilitating this whole thing. By the way, also memo to Megan Barry, Mark Green, Congressman Mark Green, he's also the chairman of the House Committee on Homeland Security. He's been grilling the Democrats on the open borders since he started in that role. And before that, by the way. So for Megan Barry to say that he has done nothing is simply a false allegation, clearly. Oh, and by the way, he's got a lifetime score of 93% on the Heritage Action score on conservatism.
We're losing our rural hospitals at an alarming rate, and people are dying because of it. And women in Tennessee are dealing with one of the most extreme abortion bans in the country, and Mark Green supports it.
So the loss of rural hospitals isn't something Mark Green can deal with necessarily by himself. That is a big discussion of Medicare expansion, private insurance, and state and federal lawmakers. The amount of people living in the rural communities and the costs associated with being actually a rural hospital with fewer patients, that is part of the issue, is that they have a lot of this overhead that they've got to meet, and fewer people are going into these rural hospitals. That means they have fewer patients and fewer income being brought in. It is a much larger discussion. And by the way, you know who we're going to speak with at 7:06 about just that is Congressman Scott Desjardins, who also happens to be a medical doctor. But again, it is a larger discussion. But to me, it is simply put a cheap talking point that makes it seem like somehow Mark Green, a doctor, is somehow supporting the closure of rural hospitals. He's actually been trying to save them, Megan Barry, because, again, as a medical doctor, he understands the need for these facilities. And as far as abortion, which she also mentions, well, Mark Green, Congressman Mark Green, is an unapologetically pro-life conservative. Kind of going over point by point, Megan Barry, former mayor of Nashville, who had to resign in disgrace after having an affair, and the whole thing with the overtime, the bodyguard, cemetery, all that stuff is, to me, you know, it's all part of what I would say is a lacking of a character. But here's the thing. To me, I don't think it really matters, because conservatives, I mean, let's all be honest. Donald Trump has had many affairs, and so it's not necessarily the affair itself that a lot of people perhaps are concerned about or not concerned about. It was what I would say is the misappropriation of taxpayer dollars as her bodyguard got all of that overtime. But I'm playing for you some of the sound bites from her video announcement yesterday that she was running, challenging Congressman Mark Green for the 7th Congressional District. And here's one more audio bite from former Mayor Megan Barry.
So today, I'm announcing my campaign for Congress because working families have been ignored for far too long. We need an economy and a government that works for everyone. If I can save even one other parent from burying a child, it'll be worth every effort.
So she says, and again, that is the third time in 90 seconds that she mentioned the sad passing of her son. But she talks about how we need an economy and a government that works for everyone. I would remind Megan Barry, isn't her party and the president the party of Bidenomics? And isn't Bidenomics what is destroying the personal economy of millions of Americans? Didn't her president, Joe Biden, tell us for a year that inflation wasn't rising, and then when they had to admit that it was, that inflation was actually good? Remember all that? The economy has had major challenges, and to blame Mark Green for that is just silly. And also, I would remind Megan Barry that Mark Green and all the other Republicans in the House of Representatives voted against Joe Biden and the Democrats' American Rescue Plan. Now, that was Joe Biden infusing money into the economy when he shouldn't have. It wasn't necessary at the time. And he also increased in that same legislation, he increased federal spending at a massive scale. And almost every economist out there will tell you that is what fueled all of that inflation. So please, Megan Barry, tell us how Mark Green is responsible for rising inflation. Give me a break. Finally, and this is a little touchy, but I do find it unseemly that in one 90-second video, she brought up her son's passing 3 times. That does not make her immune from criticism about her affair or the misappropriation of funds related to the affair, as her bodyguard/boyfriend made thousands of dollars in overtime. Now, I don't believe that she's going to win, but at some point, Mark Green is going to run for governor or the Senate, I believe. And then that seat will be open. So what she may be doing is she may be doing this sort of like as a next step to eventually take another step, you know, sort of testing the waters on her political viability. Maybe she'll run for governor. Who knows? When Bill Lee ends his run in 2027. But for me, I don't necessarily see a path forward for Megan Barry.